see it says that we were streaming. I don't see it streaming though. Unless there's a delay. I do want to do this though.
I see it.
You see it?
Mm-hmm.
We're live? Yes, we are live. Good evening, folks. This is Theo, editor in chief here at the Batman Universe. Wanted to welcome you all to our first ever live stream here on YouTube. And who do I have here with me tonight?
This is Steph. Am I introducing the whole Shima bubble?
I don't know. We're not supposed to be.
This is
Currently,
Steph. I'm on the TBU Batman. Wait, no, that is Batman. The TBU comic podcast. I do not have a brain, so that's gonna be fun tonight. And I do preview articles on the website, and I do reviews of Wayne Family Adventures with Ian.
This is Adil. I'm on the TBU that's the TBU regular podcast. I also do comic reviews for the site. I am the TBU Discord moderator, and my comic reviews are usually about miniseries because, as we'll find out later today, I refuse to read on an issue-to-issue basis.
I'm Ian. I'm also on the comic podcast with Steph and Theo. And I currently review Detective Comics. I'm signed up to review the Bat Dash Man First Night comic coming up. I'm excited. Well, that's one of my things I'm going to talk about later. And I babble about Stephanie Brown all the time.
so, and of course, again, I am Theo, editor in chief. Uh, for a couple of years, I've kind of been the silent partner here at TVU with Dustin before he decided to move on to some new things and turned the reins on over to me. So, of course, editor in chief, I do a little bit of everything here at TVU, but happy with the role and with the privilege of being here tonight and having you folks be here with us. So, got a couple of topics that we're gonna discuss. This being an end of year show. So, first off, we're gonna take a look at our highlights, and our high points of 2023 before we jump into our low points of 2023, and then we'll look into the future and see where we'd like for things to go. So, uh, let's go ahead and kick things off in looking at our highlights for the year. And as I laid things out to the crew back when we did this, started planning this, we're limiting ourselves to three topics of our highlights. It can be anywhere within the industry as long as at least one is within the Batman universe. And so we are going to kick those things off with Steph.
So my highlights for this year were, you know, Batman Beyond Neo Gothic. I was surprised because I'm not usually a Batman Beyond girl, but man, I really enjoyed that, especially the second story with the Catboy in it. Is I'm liking that one. And then the Super Duper Omnibus come out. That was pretty great. And you know what? That made me realize there's a lot of Super Sons I don't have, and I need to keep hunting. I was hoping it would all be in the omnibus, but it's okay. And then the Trinity backup of Wonder Woman with Super Sons in it. It's just too cute for words, and that was a really good end to the year, I think, for me.
I don't.
So my highlights. I assume we're just gonna go one after the other here.
Yeah, and for Otto, most folks who don't know Otto, his world of comic books are trade paperbacks. We're always reading floppies for the comic cats, but Otto's like, yeah, no, I had to kind of wrench his arm in order for him to review City of Madness for us on the site. So his take on the world of comic books at a minimum is it's quite different from the other guys here on the cast. So I will take it away.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I prefer reading in trade paperback format simply because it gives me a whole story at a time. And just with my schedule, I find that works a lot better and easier for me. So my first highlight now, this is going to probably be a little controversial because I've been listening to your comic cast, but it's Tom Taylor's Nightwing and the first 3 volumes. And I want to say this because I do want to give him props because everything Tom Taylor that I have read to this point, I have disliked. A lot of it strongly disliked. And this is the first thing where I'm like, oh, Tom Taylor, he surprised me. This is actually a good story. I like the characters, I like the art, I like what's happening here. You know, there's a happy element to it, which is really rare with the Bat family nowadays in comics. But of course, I have been listening to the comic cast. So I've only read the first 3 volumes of that, and I liked all of it. And of course, Fear State is, I guess, his 4th volume there. But I have been listening to the comic cast, which has gone ahead of where I have finished reading. And you all have said that it kind of goes downhill, so I'm a little apprehensive about that now. The second thing for me is everything that's kind of been happening with Wonder Woman ever since the Afterworlds Volume 1, which was Wonder Woman kind of wandering in the Norse mythology afterlife, the introduction of Siegfried. I really enjoyed that whole run. And I even liked they brought in some new characters like Yara Flor. I mean, I don't think they've really done enough with her. I don't think they know what to do with her sometimes, but I do like the fact that they're expanding the mythology of the Amazons. They're really building it out that way. And then with what Tom King has done so far, I think it's still very early. Like with all Tom King books with Wonder Woman, you kind of have to wait until the end before you judge a Tom King story. Can't really go issue by issue. But I have mixed feelings on it. But what I have liked, I think, has been strong. And I can see that he's aiming to do something, at least, that most comic writers aren't doing. So that would be my second thing. The third highlight of 2023 is, this might ruffle some feathers too, but goodbye to the DCEU and goodbye to Zack Snyder. So long. Don't let the door hit you on the way out, because this era of DC films the Zack Snyder era has been absolutely atrocious. I think, as I've said before on the TVU podcast, I think it has done irreparable damage to the brand, and we may have to go forward like another 5-10 years before we even see some of that damage, some of that goodwill start to come back to the fan base. So I'm just happy that that's done. We can turn the page officially and move on. Those are my 3 highlights.
Ian, I don't know how you're going to top that one.
I'm not trying to top it. Mine are actually pretty boring. First one is Jorge Jimenez came back to art on Batman. He's my favorite comic artist, and him coming back to Batman was really good. And even if I haven't always loved some of the things he's had to illustrate, I think he's put his heart and soul into it, and it's gorgeous. Number 2 is a new writer that he's not really new, but he's sort of new to becoming kind of more prominent, and that's Kenny Porter. He's done a lot of good stuff with Superboy miniseries and the Night Terror's Robin miniseries. Both of those were really good character-focused pieces that had solid action and good emotions, and I would gladly look forward to more stuff from him. And lastly is the Superman books in general have been really great, led by Josh Williamson and Philip Kennedy Johnson on Superman and Action Comics, and there's been a lot of good spin-offs, and some not-so-good spin-offs, but some good spin-offs. And that's kind of inspired me to go back and read a bunch of 2008 to 2010 Superman comics in the new Krypton crossover. So that's been kind of really exciting, because I've almost always been focused much more on the Batman universe. So getting involved in the Superman universe is, even if it's old comics, feels fresh because I haven't done it before.
Okay, so I have one highlight that is really early 2023, and probably goes to the latter part of 2022, and it's on the same page as Otto, and that's Tom Taylor's Nightwing. I mean, we got the travesty that was the saga of Ulrich that really just killed us all. And you know, when the when the highlight of that run is the girlfriend that he breaks the heart of at the end of that, if that's the highlight, that pretty much tells you it wasn't really good. But early on, when Tom took over, Steph and I was just all over this book, and I mean, every time Ian missed the cast, we were all over something with Tom Taylor, especially what he was doing with Nightwing, and he, especially with how he was developing the relationship between Dick and Babs, and as a Dick Babs shipper, you know, I found that to be a good consolation prize, considering how I enjoyed the relationship between B and Rick. And having B around in the new run would have been okay with me. But with her not being there, it was fine. So that was an early highlight for me. I'm not going to say it stayed that way, but it was an early highlight for me. Uh, Second, I'm going to go along with Ian, and I'm going to say Superman. Um, I'm I'm trying to say what I want to say without saying what I really normally say, because I don't know how to bleep myself with OBS and on YouTube. Uh, but everyone who knows me knows that I soured completely on Superman when Brian Bendis took it over. Brian Michael Bendis took it over, and I didn't really, I didn't really enjoy Philip Kennedy Johnson's run either, simply because he really just took what Bendis had done and he expanded on it, and then it kind of went all over the place with the War World thing, and then all of a sudden now we have this huge family that's been brought back, and I was kind of timid on Joshua Williamson taking over on Superman. But what kind of hooked me was Jamal Campbell. I am a huge Jamal Campbell fan, so I will pick up anything that he draws. But, damn it, this story is really good. And I really enjoy what Joshua Williamson is doing. And again, the three of us, Steph, Ian, and I, we've been hard on Josh for a long time with a lot of his stuff, going back to the Abyss arc in Batman. And what he's doing right now in Superman is just fun. And I had the pleasure of interviewing him a few months ago to talk about what he's doing with Skybound, with the Energy Universe and Transformers and GI Joe and all of that. But before we got on record, I started talking about his DC stuff, and I told him, "Thank you for making me a fan of Superman again. I am truly a fan of his. Once again, I'm a fan of what Joshua Williamson is doing, and that's hard to do. I didn't think anyone could bring me back after what they did with Tomasi and Jurgensen's run on Superman in Action during Rebirth. I just think they got the shaft. But Joshua Williamson reeled me in. And then finally, another latecomer for 2023, and I will be remiss. And again, this is Joshua Williamson once again. Batman and Robin. It is, if I had a book of the year right now, it would be Batman and Robin. And even though it is quite early in its run, I am absolutely loving it. We are we're seeing two things. One that we've seen already, but something that we really haven't seen before. One, we're seeing a continuation of Williamson's run on Robin. It's really a continuation of that series, in my opinion. But what we're also seeing is we're also seeing a Batman that's attempting to be a dad, and while still being a superhero, and wanting to see his son experience all the things that he didn't get as a kid, but also what Damien hasn't gotten due to his upbringing, and so he's trying to change that. And we haven't seen writers do that in a long time when it comes to Bruce, and to see that relationship and how he's trying to strengthen that father-son relationship with Damien is just wonderful, and that is truly a book that I love. So those are my three highlights. So before we move on, any open comments on any of the highlights thus far?
I take back nothing I said about Shadow War. That was a terrible, terrible crossover.
Neither do I. I mean, and again, Shadow War and the Abyss arc was just. I mean, I think that there were better ways to introduce Batman Incorporated again. Abyss was not it.
It's unfortunate though because Abyss had some really great art in it.
It did, and then once the cop took over the character that led into Batman Inc., she just disappeared. I thought that there was a way that they could have really developed that character once she donned the costume. Okay, so we talked about our high points. Let's get to our low points. Ian, I think I'm going to kick things off to you. What are your low points for 2023?
Low points are first is Gotham War. Partly because we're the Batman universe, we were very cued into it. Partly because I was, I'm trying to remember. I was more excited about it than Night Terrors, but I was also nervous about it because it was Catwoman, and knowing how Catwoman had gone to that point, I was pretty sure that it had a high chance of being terrible. It was actually worse than I thought, because it wasn't just one terrible story, it was two terrible stories. And neither of them made any sense. It did have great art. Jorge Jimenez still killed it, but wow, Gotham War is a huge low point. Second is the sheer number of freaking crossovers at DC. There were 5 crossovers. Lazarus Planet, Night Terrors, Gotham War, Beast World, and there was one more that I always forget, but there were too many in 1 year. You should build to one crossover in a year.
They basically pulled a Marvel move where Marvel
Exactly.
was just doing crossover after crossover after crossover after
and then my non-DC, non-Batman, and this is extremely cliched, but Spider-Man really does suck right now. It's really terrible.
I don't think there's any redeeming of Spider-Man.
No, and I say this as someone who likes John Romita Jr.'s art. So this is not me just like, ooh, I hate you. No, I like John Romita Jr.'s art, but this run is awful.
You really like Romita's art?
I do, because he was the first Spider-Man I fell in love with. His stuff with JMS in the early 2000s is still really strong.
Would you say...
Go
ahead, Theo.
No, but I mean, JMS Spider-Man and JMS Spider-Man with Romita is not the same. I mean, his style is not the same at all.
Would you say, though, that Romita has declined a bit in terms of skill?
I wouldn't say he's declined in skill. I think part of the problem is I don't think his inkers are as good as they used to be, or he doesn't use an inker anymore. And I think he has gotten a little let's say, looser. But
People
he's
have
always been pretty loose on pencils. Like what I like about him is his humor and his storyboarding, like his layouts. And unfortunately, Zeb Wells is not writing good humor. Like Zeb Wells's idea of humor is MCU quips, and that's not the kind of humor that you can get across with art. That's purely verbal humor. Like what you need for JRJR is him like drinking coffee and having Spider-Man being really jitty, and he could capture that on a still frame, and that was his genius. But now, like Zeb Wells isn't doing that kind of like clever character stuff. He's just like, "Ooh, I said a funny line, and then I said it backwards. So isn't that clever?" No, it's not Zeb Wells.
I've heard former fans of his use the term lazy, that he's gotten a little lazy with his drawing, and you know, maybe that's what you might be meaning when you say loose in his
Yeah,
style. It, 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 he's not as intentional as he used to be.
yeah. So those are my three lowlights.
Steph, did you want to go?
Sure. I had to change my first one real quick because I realized that was more 2022. So my first one is DC and Ruby. DC/Ruby. I'm a pretty big Ruby fan. Actually, just recently went through and watched all the seasons again, caught up on all the stuff I had missed on. And it's such a rich, awesome series. And even after it fell apart and the creator died and people got upset with this, that, blah, 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 it's still a very rich universe. Even if you hate it, it's still just so cool. And the comic book sucked the personalities out of all the girls and didn't do much world building or anything, and Batman wasn't any better. So that was really disappointing as both a Batman, DC, and Ruby fan. Um, Kind of piggybacking what Ian said about Gotham War, any hope I had for Batcat is dead. with Gotham War. And then my last one's a bit of a cheat because I'm covering quite a bit of property with this one, but Good Writers Gone Bad. So like Tech is disappointing. The webtoons Red Hood kind of went off the rails. I have no clue, and it really seemed like they were forced to like finish that up with whatever nonsense that was. Dick and Babs got married at the end because that was cute. Um, Nightwing is bonkers now. Superboy Man was awful, written by Tom Taylor, and we're the Tom Taylor cast buddies. You know, it was awful. And then just all the Batman events, like Ian was saying, there's just too many, and just writers that we like sharing disappointing things. That was my number 3.
So for me,
Oh,
so,
go ahead.
Theo, you had something to say?
No, go ahead.
I was going to get started on my 3 lowlights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so the first one. So I feel like I have to preface this with. So there's a meme on Twitter, which is now, some people call X. I still call it Twitter. But there's this sports talk show person named Stephen A. Smith, who anytime he criticizes someone, he likes to preface it by saying, "I'm sure they're a nice person, and I'm sure they're great at this and that, but I'm just specifically talking about their craft." And so I'm kind of going to channel that and say, I'm sure Teenie Howard is a nice person. I know nothing about her personally. I'm sure she's great. I'm just talking about her writing, but it is not like I'm just not a fan. It is just bad. It is a low light for me. I read the first 2 volumes of her Catwoman series, and then I've kind of been listening to the Comic Cast discussions, and I will of course be reading the next few volumes and then the Gotham War crossover. But I'm not looking forward to it because it's just some of the worst. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's just some of the worst writing that I've read in comics in a very, very long time. So that is definitely a low light for me, and it's to the point now where I'm actually in a position where, for the first time as a comic fan, I am no longer collecting any main Batman book just because of the crossover with Chip Zdarsky and Teenie Howard. So I'm not collecting any of the books. So that's kind of sad to me. The second thing and I've mentioned this on the TBU podcast before, is DC's trade paperback release schedule. It is, to put it quite frankly, horrible. Marvel manages to get their trade paperbacks out fairly quickly, within a month or a few months of a storyline finishing. With DC, you're waiting up to 2 years for a trade paperback, and so some of the stories that some of the story arcs that you have talked about just now, I'm like, well, I haven't got to those yet because the trade paperback is simply not available. I am willing to wait a few months. I think that's reasonable. You got to print. There's realistic logistics to the business, but I think 2 years is an inordinate amount of time. And to Ian's point about the number of crossovers, what that does, what I have found is that a lot of crossovers messes with how they organize the trade paperbacks. To give you a specific example, the Clunan and Conrad Wonder Woman series, the last 2 volumes of that were just completely messed up. There's an entire story, there's an entire chapter of the story missing in the middle of one volume. I think it was the 4th volume. So it's just completely ridiculous, and there's no way for fans to kind of reach out, like, who do I talk to about this? There's no one. We don't know who does this work at DC, so we don't even know who to provide the feedback to. And it's kind of sad because I think there's a big market out there for people who want to get into these books via trade paperbacks. Ian, you have your YouTube channel and you've brought on people who have talked about their introduction to reading comics, and it was through finding trade paperbacks at the bookstore and the library. And so I think that's a really important thing for DC to be doing. So that's one of my lowlights until they fix it. The third lowlight for me is the fandom, because we sometimes, and this is a bit of a tricky one, because there's a lot of good stuff to the fandom, obviously, and I know fans is short for fanatic. However, I think as a whole, it would be better for the comic book fandom if we weren't so rabid about reacting to clickbait or creating unfounded rumors or all this obsessive behavior that we see online. I think this fandom in particular is a bit excessive with this, and I've noticed this whether it be on Twitter or on Discord, and I think it creates a lot of people who are fans who get jaded because they're like, well, why am I being a part of this community? And then on the creator side of it, even though I think creators should keep a bit of a distance, but I can understand as well how creators are like, well, these people are never going to be happy with anything that we do. So, so it's a two-way street, but I do think, I hope going forward that we can perhaps tone down. And that's one of the things I like about James Gunn is, like, he's just calling out rumors. It's like, this is false, this is false. And I think that cuts it off right away so that we don't get these websites churning out clickbait articles about, oh, so-and-so has been cast or so-and-so is going to appear here. And it's almost impossible if you're a fan to kind of sift through, like, who has the time to sift through what's reliable and what isn't. So that's just one thing I noticed, and that would be my third low light of 2023.
See, listening to you guys, I should have gone first when I had an easy tree that I could just throw out there and be done with it. But I just gotta, I don't know. It's tough. It really is. However, first off, as I mentioned, the early run of Nightwing was great. What's going on right now is just, I don't know. And the whole pirate thing has just, it's kind of lost me. And I think it's done a tremendous disservice to the character that B was. And I don't know, it's all over the place, and I know it's all over the place because it's so integrated with some of the other books, and now there's this new Beast World thing that's going on, and I get it, but I'm not going to go as far as Ian when he talks about, the lip service that Tom Taylor does with his writing, but I am I am really, I am really losing it when it comes to Nightwing. Number two, Batgirls. I really wanted to like this series. I really wanted to love this series, but the articles that came out before the first issue, I think, soured me from the start. Just knowing and hearing Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad talk about what they were planning on doing with the characters, and they really kind of went there with it. You know, I am a huge Cassandra Cain fan. Everyone who knows me knows that. Uh, but I really think that, and I'm not gonna completely hold it against Cloonan and Conrad, but the character that I've always known as Cassandra Cain has been slowly morphing into a different character, and it's probably been that way, and Ian might agree that her character has been changing since Batman and Robin Rebirth, with, you know, who she is, and maybe even Tynan's run in Detective, where, you know, she slowly started to get her vocabulary, and she got teamed up with Babs, and now she's just all over the place. But when you get to Batgirls, it's just it wasn't the series that I wanted. It was more of a comedy, and when you had Jorge Corona's art thrown in as well, I know Ian was a huge fan of his. I am not. To be clear, I am not. It just really threw me for a loop. Now, again, I bought several issues just for the covers. Never read them. The one that I did read that I thought was really good was the two issues that encircled Stephanie's death. You know, and there was that one issue where there were no words, but it was just Cass on her mission to find Steph. And those two issues really were good. But the series, for the most part, was just, and I'm kind of happy it's gone. Third low point has got to be Detective Comics, and I have said this on the server many times. I've said it on the Comic Cast. It has become a task for me to read Detective Comics these days, and I say that as someone who enjoyed the hell out of what Ron V did in Catwoman, but I don't think he's the type of writer meant for Batman, and it's unfortunate that I say that. Yeah, that Detective is probably, from where Detective was with Mariko Tamaki and where it is now with Ram V, it's just, it's night and
It
day.
doesn't fit on the screen.
Yeah, it is night and day with the enjoyment level, and it's really, really unfortunate. Ian, you want to at me for talking about your Batgirls?
I mean, when we do topic 3, you'll see.
Oh, you know.
No, I agree with you, Theo, on Batgirls. I gave it a very because I went through that period over the summer where I was catching up on reading comics, and I read like something like 48 or 50 straight trade paperbacks, and the Batgirls series was one of them. I did. in the course of like I think 2 months. So I was just like powering through them. But the Batgirls, the 2 volumes of Batgirls were ones that I read, and I did not connect with the art at all. And then the writing, which is weird because I like the Wonder Woman arc by the same writing team, but the writing in this Batgirl series, I just felt was the tone of it was kind of like what adults think teenagers would like to read. That would be my analysis of it. So yeah, I didn't like that series.
Ian, I know you want to say something.
Yeah, I'm gonna say it in topic 3.
I have a question for Adil. Cough death. When you say trade paperback, do you mean literally paper? Because a lot of times they'll come out with the hardback, and then you have to pay the extra $20 or whatever. So do you mean like actual paperback, or do you mean just releasing it in print at all?
So I like to buy the paperbacks. Now, usually for the ongoing series, the hardcover versions, those come out a year after the storyline finishes, which again I think is too long. Right there, a year is too long. And then the paperback comes out a year after the hardcover comes out, which is even longer. And I have another beef. Like DC canceled some hardcovers that they had coming out. Sorry, they canceled some paperback versions that they had coming out for Batcat. So I was waiting to buy that. And then I missed out on some discounted versions of the hardcover for that because that would be the only one available. So it kind of, as a consumer, as a customer, I kind of got, got put in a bad position by DC. So yes, it's paperbacks that I'm reading.
And they never really gave a good reason for any of it as far as canceling those titles. Because at first, the rumor was it was an issue with Tom King because all of the titles that they were canceling, they simply canceled all of his stuff at one time, and it was like, oh, they got a problem with Tom King. But then they started canceling other stuff too, and again, no reason whatsoever. And there's a market for not only trade paperbacks as we have in auto, but there's a market for hardcovers as well, the absolute versions, omnibuses. Steph and I went goo goo gaga when we saw the super duper version of Super Sons available, and we bought it the same day at the same time. So there's a market for these styles of books. The collector and me will always buy floppies. That's never gonna stop. But there will be times I'm right now counting 6 omnibuses that I bought within the last year. Now, again, it's not a lot of money because I get them on DCBS, so I get it at a discount. But there's a market, so why not take advantage of it? I mean, Marvel seems to do that well, especially on the trade paperback side. I mean, and other publishers do as well. I mean, Image will spit out a trade paperback within a month after the last issue of that arc is finished. They're pushing out the trade paperback, but I don't get why DC feels either there's no market for it or they don't want to invest in it. I don't know.
And to add on to that just a little bit, I think so there are some series where, like I told you, I was reading the Conrad and Clunan Wonder Woman, and there are tie-in issues like Nubia and the Amazons, for example, which got a 6-issue collected edition. Now, these are Canadian price figures, Canadian dollar figures I'm going to give you, but so the trade paperback, which I think they canceled, was supposed to be between, I think it was $21 or $23. The hardcover is, I think, $35 or $37. Now, that story, I liked it, but didn't love it. So for me, I would be like, because I have the rest of the books that are kind of connected to that, and I kind of liked it, but didn't love it, 21, 23, I'm willing to pay for the trade paperback. I'm not willing to pay 35, 37. So right there, you kind of lost the sale.
And the complete, I mean, Adil kind of mentioned it, but there is no portal. There's no ask a fan. There's no getting contact with the trade department or any idea. I mean, the closest you could get would be to talk to the moderators on DC Universe Infinite's forums, because they do have some contact, but they're very opaque, I think, because they're not allowed to. And so it's just this black hole of incompetence that you're looking at when it comes to the DC Trade Department.
I don't know. They make these moves that we all kind of see are money grabs, and y'all have to excuse me. I'm getting food because Theo's the type one that I bet again. Y'all don't want Theo to pass out on live on YouTube Live. That would not be good, especially for me. But I mean, you all heard my recent rant about Batman 428, and if you haven't, download the latest episode of the podcast as well as the free TBU extra on our Patreon page. But it's just like they don't put complete thought into some of the decisions that they make, and I don't know why. It's almost like they look for the quick buck instead of the long-term success that could be had for them. And I think Marvel is constantly showing them how to do this stuff, but out of fear of being told, "Oh, you're just doing it because Marvel's doing it," they don't do it, and I think they leave a lot of fans behind because of it. But as Steph says, enough of this nonsense.
Enough of this.
Enough of this nonsense. Let's move on. And I know Ian was ready to get to this. Topic 3. Favorite comic of 2023. And we're going to limit it to two titles. Or it can be 2 issues, but no more than 2. Ooh, excuse me. With at least 1. Hiccup. Within the Batman universe. Steph, kick it off.
Okie dokie. I did runs, limited runs. Batman and Robin was on the short list, but I had to pick Batman Incorporated. When that ended, I think I cried because I was like, no, I want more. Give me more. And then the other one is Batman Beyond Neo-Gothic. I'm just really surprised how much I enjoyed reading that one.
Why?
And I think there was the surprise of liking it, and then also like wanting to read more. Whereas like we like Batman and Robin a lot, this first storyline went on way too long. So like there was a little, not a dread, but like a, yeah, I get it. Oh look, it's so cute. But I thoroughly enjoyed both those runs very much. That's it.
Back at you.
So, my top 2 comics for 2023.
And I'm assuming we're doing trades?
Yes, we are. We're doing trades. In fact, the first one, my number 1, is a massive trade. It's a 700-page trade. And that would be Superman the Warworld Saga, which just came out in trade paperback format last month. It's a collection of the 3 volumes of Philip Kennedy Johnson's run, and I was very hesitant at first, and this is perhaps a good reminder to myself and to others to not always judge a book by its cover, and to maybe give things a chance and not just dismiss things right away. Because I saw the sorry.
Somehow I feel you're pointing that at me from what I said about not picking up Johnson's run simply because.
No. I meant it in general. But I mean, I looked at the art, the cover art for it, and I saw Superman with this like chain shield on him, and it was very looking like Conan the Barbarian almost. And I was like, what is this? This is not Superman. Why would I want to read this? And then I heard some people I trust, Ian being one of them, saying, "Yeah, just give it a try. See if you like it." So I gave it a try, and I was hooked. And I thought it was one of the best Superman stories I had ever read. I think it combines a lot of the timeless tales that humans have, the themes in the timeless tales that humans have told, whether you believe those stories are true or not, but that humans have told since the beginning of time, pretty much. And it crosses that with the core of what makes Superman such a beloved hero to so many people. It really gets to the heart of that as well. So I just absolutely love that, and can't recommend it enough. The second one,
First, we must say the unblooded sword.
What?
That's a reference from the comic. For those of you who don't know, we're not advocating violence on this show.
No, unblooded means it's not violent.
Blooded, yes. The second one for me is Batman the Knight, and this one I really enjoyed. I think I reviewed it for the site as well, but I thought one of the really creative aspects of it was exploring a period of time where we don't have much material on. Now we've always seen, like, we always know the rough outline of the story, that Batman traveled the world and he trained with all these different masters. But what exactly did that look like? We don't really have an in-depth story exploring that, and I like that Chip Zdarsky and the whole creative team actually went into exploring in different locales in the world, different skill sets that Batman picks up that he might have to use later. And I'm really looking forward to a volume 2. Now, how that connects, it's interesting because I read the first volume of Chip Zdarsky's Batman run, which was Failsafe, and I had very mixed feelings about that. And so far, what I've seen, I'm not a fan of Grant Morrison generally. I'm definitely not a fan of Ziranar, and I think that's a big part of what Chip Zdarsky has done. So I have to see how it connects to his run so far, but I definitely recommend Batman the Knight.
I'm surprised.
We have Irish Ra's al Ghul. What more do you want from Batman's backstory?
I am surprised a lot of us didn't have the Knight in our list of, if not of highlights of ju- of our favorite comics, because it's not in my list either.
Is it? Was that technical? Because if the trade came
It
out this
ended
year,
last October. That's why.
yeah,
Oh, gotcha. The trade just came out. See, you
Yeah.
get away with stuff like that, Otto.
he can't. Yeah.
All right. So, my best comic run of 2023, I will go along with Steph and say Batman Incorporated. I was really hesitant with not just Bresson writing, but also with Tim's drawing on the title, and they both impressed me. That was a hell of a story that really just took the team to a whole new level. Um, if there's anything that I didn't like, was that one, it ended too soon. I thought this was a story that probably could have gone on a whole lot longer, especially since the way they introduced the characters. There was the big international team, but then there were also these smaller regional countryside members that they really didn't focus on. I mean, Grey Wolf ended up moving from where he was in his home country onto the main team. We never saw Abyss again. It if there was a downside, it was that it ended too soon without allowing Brisson to really focus on these other minor characters. But I love the ship that was created between Knight and Grey Wolf. That was just loved it. But the whole story and the Joker Incorporated story arc was just downright. I mean, we've seen we've seen many stories where Joker has pushed this narrative of one bad day and trying to break Bruce's will so that he could do the unthinkable, and it's never worked. However, with Batman Inc., we got a character in Ghostmaker who didn't have a problem killing and didn't have a problem breaking the rule and came plenty of times within that arc alone of crossing over and breaking that rule to only be pulled back by the rest of the team. And it caused him to quit. You know, that was a great story. That was a great story arc. I really enjoyed everything in Batman Inc. For my second book, and it is a non-TBU title, and it's something that started real late in 2023. It is Void Rivals by Robert Kirkman over at Skybound and Image. So, for those who don't follow me on the Comic Bin podcast, which you should, that's the non-TBU stuff. Skybound has this partnership with Hasbro where they basically created this whole new universe with G.I. Joe and Transformers and this new series which is called Void Rivals that Robert Kirkman is writing. And he has used this title to really just explode a different viewpoint of these characters that we know as the Transformers. That it's just really interesting, and as you pick up the pages of Transformers now, which is written and drawn by Daniel Warren Johnson, and Ian, you will actually enjoy this even though he does both. It is a whole new world that is different than anything that you may have seen in the cartoon if you were a child of the 80s like me who grew up on both cartoons, G.I. Joe and Transformers. It is different in what you may have seen in the early comic series over at Marvel and the crossovers they've done there. It is different than anything that you're seeing done in IDW. They've actually taken Larry Hama's G.I. Joe and have brought it over to Image as well. It is just a universe that is just not something you would have expected to see. Like, Bumblebee is dead. It's not he gets to be rebuilt or reactivated. Nah, he's dead, and he died in the first issue. And they're building a whole new world, and I'm really interested to see where it all goes. But it really kicked off with what Robert Kirkman started doing in Void Rivals. So that is my second title. Any comments on anything?
All right, my turn.
Did I skip you, Ian? I'm sorry.
I mean, we've been kind of going out of order anyway, so I thought that you just wanted me to be last this time. So my first title, unfortunately, both of my titles are not ongoing anymore. But my first title is The Flash by Jeremy Adams, which ended this. Actually, they both ended this June. The Flash by Jeremy Adams is a fantastic book. I highly recommend getting it in trade. It is heartwarming. It's very cleverly constructed. It's got a lot of really good art, even though, like a lot of titles these days, DC shuffled artists a lot. But it's really good, and I do recommend following Adams to his Jay Garrick Flash and Green Lantern title, but this year, Flash really was the best title that he worked on, and one of the best titles of the year, I think. Second is Batgirls. I know that all three of my co-hosts here did not enjoy this title, but I looked forward to it every week. I really enjoyed it, and I was very sad um, when it was canceled. I think that how it hits a reader is very individual, and what I will say, to agree with my co-host's points, is that it was a comic with, whether intentional or not, a much more niche audience than I wish it had had. It was definitely a more indie, just a less mainstream book than I think it could have been, given different art teams and different editorial dictates. But even given that, I was in the niche that enjoyed the title, so it was one of my two favorite books of the year, and I do enjoy it.
Okay, I didn't mean to laugh. I wasn't laughing at you, Ian, but I'm monitoring the chat.
Ooh, we
And
have comments?
our friend Borval, before you even started talking, said Ian's gonna pick Batgirl so his vote doesn't count. And sure enough, sure enough, there we go.
I don't know that we were voting. I just think we're sharing, right?
So tell me this: did you give Cysperi a shot with?
I did. I gave him a shot. I read the first issue. I read the short story at the end of Flash 800, and then I read the first issue. And I've actually read a couple issues since then. I haven't read all the issues sequentially, but I've read a couple issues since then. Unfortunately, Cy Spurrier has decided to be a complete douchebag on Twitter, so I refuse to read any more by him or anything that he says for quite a while. It's going to take a while for me to be okay interacting with any of his work again for a long time. But I did give him a chance.
Steph gave that look. I don't see. So listening to you and Otto, I don't know if I want to pick up action or give it a second go with Philip Kennedy Johnson. It just like I said, I was just so soured with everything DC did with the Bendis stuff, with Superman in action, and Johnson 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 basically took what Bendis did and kind of just strung it along and continued it. So I just had no interest in it. But 700 pages, you are my hero, dude. I just want to put it out there for everyone to know.
It is. I mean, it is definitely a bit of a slow burn, and I think the end of the story was a bit rushed, and I think that's because they wanted to kind of sync it up with the reboot of Superman with Williamson and Jamal Campbell coming on board. So I think they wanted to kind of have it match up that way. But yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it, and I think one of the reasons I enjoyed it was actually because I read the last couple volumes of Bendis's run right before. So still had to catch up on those two. So I read those two, and then I went into this one, the War World Saga. And one of the reasons I liked it is because it felt so different to me, both in terms of quality, in terms of the thematic elements that were at play. The one thing that is kind of the same, and I think that's what you're alluding to, in that he kind of continued what Bendis did, is Superman's kind of separated from his family. But it is, I would also say that the story is very much about family and the importance of family. So it's kind of almost like a refutation of what Bendis did in that way. So yeah, and one more thing, not about Superman, that I wanted to add. Both Steph and Theo have recommended Batman Incorporated, I think, and for those of you who like Ghostmaker, Batman the Knight is also kind of like a origin story for Ghostmaker as well.
Oh yeah, that's true.
That is true. That is definitely true.
And if this was 2020, it would have made my recommendation.
So let me ask this question. In the past few years, we've seen the Flash family have come back. We've seen Superman now have this expanded family. Do you think editorial is getting jealous of the Bat family, to where now and now we see what's going on with the Amazons? We have Yara, and they're bringing in Trinity, and all these families being developed. Do we think that DC has kind of wanna take the concept that they developed with the Bat family and just think it's gonna work with all of the main superheroes. Because even I mean
Yeah,
it's even in Green Arrow, isn't it?
I mean, I just think the idea of having more than one character is good. And I mean, have they all? I mean, yeah, they might be expanding them, but the Flash has had a million flashes for a really long time. And I just think maybe jealous probably isn't the right word, but it's a formula that sells. I'm gonna buy Trinity. It's working.
Yeah, I think they've realized that having more characters gives people a chance to connect with more characters. Like you never know which character is going to take off and be a hit with fans. And I think the Bat family has enough characters that have solid fan bases on their own that they have to kind of keep them around. One distinction I would make, I think, between especially Superman's family and the Bat family is I feel like the DC editorial always likes to make the Bat family feel very dysfunctional
Mhm.
because they feel like any period of peace means well the stories end there, folks. Like that's it. You can't have stories if there's like good feelings,
Which I think is
within the.
which I think is absolutely bunk. I think
Yeah,
it
I mean it makes no sense.
Yeah, I think it, and I meant to ask Joshua Williamson that question when I interviewed him, but I just didn't get the time to. But I just think that concept, and I've asked this on server and in several episodes of the Comic Cast. Why is it that every single writer on Batman feels like the only way to write Batman is a tormented one, and it does not make sense.
You can, I think, write the character like having his motivation come from a place of torment, a place of pain, but that doesn't mean he has to be continually going through that. And I think it's better, I think, for the reader sometimes to have him have some type of closure. And I think that's one of the reasons I really connected with Tom King's run. And I know that's a very mixed reaction amongst fans, but
Not on his based, all I have to say.
but I think that's that's what he was trying to do, and I do feel like editorial kind of stopped that from happening, and that's what ends up happening all the time. Is like there's always the families, there's some drama and they break up, and then that's the only, as you said, Theo, that's the only way writers feel like they can do it. And when I look at Superman and how cohesive his family is, like the stories don't end. Like Superman and Lois are good, but it's not like the stories end there, right? Like there's still stories that can be told. So I just wish they'd realize that and apply that to the Bat family as well.
Yeah, I, I saw Ian thinking, so I'm wondering if he and I might make the same argument. I'm gonna let Ian go first. Go, Ian.
I think that comics go through waves of expansion and contraction, and right now DC is trying to expand in a more sustainable way, and I think that generally a family is a good way to do that because it allows you to market them more effectively. Like back in when the first Metal came out, I think in 2017, they had this whole thing of the new age of heroes, and that was 6 titles or miniseries that they dropped, and these characters were not connected to anybody. Now, some of them had like tangential connections, like Silencer had a connection to Talia, but that wasn't really the hook of the character. The hook of the character was these are Marvel characters in the DC universe. And those titles failed epically. And that's not, I think, because they were necessarily bad titles. It's because you can't organically get a regular DC or Marvel superhero fan excited about a brand new character purely because of their powers or their circumstances. You have to get them connected because they connect to something someone already likes. And people might say that's derivative or whatever, but I think that when we make a friend, we often will make a friend because of a connection, like they know our friend or they're a friend of our family. I think the same thing is true of a comic character, that if they're a friend of like Tim Drake or Batman or Superman or Connor Kent. We already have a connection. They're part of a story that we already like. And I think that is smart, although we'll see if they've done it too quickly and if they've gotten the connection to fans that they need to make the title sell.
So if I were to have a concern with family and all of the families that have been popping up, and I think what everyone is saying is valid, but my concern is kinda no, we do not want a Bernard series. Shut up, Donna.
I just saw that.
My concern is exposure because when you have all of these members, there's only so much of a story that you can tell within 22 pages or however the page count is if you do a backup. So unless unless you're now going to create, and I know they're doing the Trinity Mini and things of that nature, at some point someone's story is not going to be told. And I guess I can use Batman Inc. as a good example because in those pages, you know, there were some issues where you never saw some characters who are supposed to be main members of the team. And I fear that unless they plan on doing a Trinity mini or an Amico story over at Green Lantern, or like they're doing with Speed Force with Wallace and who's that Flash? That's the Flash from China, right? That's in Speed Force. But
Avery Ho?
yeah, I think that's what that is. But I mean, unless you are going to be doing that and having these outside stories that can contain them, you're gonna have just a whole bunch of stuff with people missing. Like for example, since Batgirls has ended, how often have we seen Steph? I mean, there was Gotham War, and
The man who lost his laugh or something.
it's been very limited. You know, they use Cass in the spirit, excuse me, Spirit World mini, and now she's in Birds of Prey, which I absolutely hate because it's not a TBU title. It was always a TBU title. Are you gonna take a TBU title and not make it a TBU title? But you,
I see we're doing honorable mentions on the things we hated.
but if you're gonna have family, have space for them. And I just think if I think at some point they're gonna run out of space, especially with as they grow the members of the family. I mean, even in the Batman universe, we went from Bruce and the Robins to and Babs to Bruce, the Robins, Babs, Steph, Cass. Then we added Duke. Then it's just constantly growing, and we will go months on end without hearing a blip from Duke Thomas, which is why I wanted Brandon Thomas on Outsiders. Or we have the situation now where, Steph is showing up in a nonsensical way in the Joker, Man Who Stopped Laughing, or she's the lead character in the Beast World anthology that's our cover image of the latest comic cast. But there there's an upside to having family, but the downside is if you have too many, it leads to problems. I think they're doing well with. I think they're doing well on the Superman side because Supergirl or Power Girl has her own mini going on right now. Um, they got Fire and Ice doing their thing, and they're all interconnected. You know, John is the John series still going on? Oh, it ended. Okay, as you can tell, I didn't read it. I refuse to read anything John Kent until John Kent is a kid again. Sorry.
You're
Don't
missing out.
don't don't add me.
I do it
But
all.
if you're gonna have family, you need to have space for them, and that's my only thing.
Yeah, I think you have to have space for them. There is a limit, right? There's a limit, and then beyond that, characters get underused. I think one solution is potentially taking some characters out of the city. Like with the Bat Family, there's always this insistence of having them in Gotham City, which I think holds it back. Which is why I think Batman Incorporated, The Outsiders, is such a great idea, is because oftentimes it removes them from that context and gives them their own story outside of whatever's happening with Batman in Gotham. And then the other thing too is if there are characters who they have decided they're not going to use, instead of just keeping them around, just let them go the way of Harper Row. If you remember, Harper Row was added early on, and that character was a prominent part, and then just, I guess, didn't connect with audiences, and the DC writing team basically said they weren't going to use. There was no interest, I guess, in using that character, and the character basically is retired. And so I think they have to make some decisions, and those are always tough decisions, and there's always going to be perhaps some people, a minority of people sometimes, that are going to be upset. But it is better than just having characters in no man's land, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't miss Harper. She could stay wherever she is, messing around with Punchline and Cullen and his crazy boyfriend who radicalized them.
Don't forget Joker's daughter.
Oh God.
He was pretty great. I did forget about her.
Wait, what was great? The fact that you forgot about her?
But I forgot about her.
Yeah, just if you're gonna do it, have space. If you don't have space for them, don't create them. And certain writers will create characters for the sheer hell of creating them so that they can have creators' rights, so on and so forth. I totally get it, but I mean, a lot of times these characters failed. Harper Row failed. Punchline, for all of the hoopla that they threw out there for Punchline. I mean, every time they've tried to do something with her, it's failed. Um,
Is because Punchline is just two punchlines in a shirt.
if you're gonna do that, you might as well just give us an Angel Breaker series.
Angel Breaker is so much cooler than Punchline, man.
Yeah,
Lord Almighty mercy.
and I'm not even gonna talk about outfits. I'm just gonna talk about how she was used in Night Terrors. I think if they would have explored that further with her, it was like they were going somewhere with it, and then it just, as much as those crossovers or those spin-offs for Night Terrors did. But we're now a few days away from 2024. So I asked my colleagues here, what are you looking forward to in the new year? 2 points, and again, it has to be at least one that's TBU related, and it does not have to be. I'm being cut off. Yes, ma'am.
No, I'm just counting.
you're
At least
counting.
one.
At least one.
I'm Vanna Whiting you what you're saying.
Gotcha, okay,
One,
well,
at least
perfect.
one TBU.
At least one TBU, and it does not have to be limited to comics. Because again, we're the Batman universe, and the Batman universe looks at video games, TV, movies, merchandise, and more.
Yeah, more.
And more. So I will kick it off with Steph.
Collecting Trinity into one delightful uh super children, as we now have to call them, because they're not the sons anymore, they're the super children collection. I'm really excited about that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and say 3 because one is gonna be manga related. I just discovered, because it's an anime this year, the Apothecary Diaries, and so I'm totally starting to collect all that manga because it's like Chinese, ancient China girl Sherlock Holmes. I don't know. It's kind of fun.
Oh.
Yes, it's a lot of fun. And then
Is that a webtoon?
it's an anime on Crunchyroll. If you watch Crunchyroll, you can watch the Apothecary Diaries.
Theo has Crunchyroll.
Gonna check it out. But I'm also I'm gonna start collecting the mangas. And then just kind of sneaking ahead at what the solicits say, we're getting a lot more Bat Family stuff. Like, looks like Red Hood gets a book with a possible new girlfriend who isn't Artemis, but you know.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I know, but we'll see. And it just looks like that the Bat Family's getting a lot of fun stuff to do, and so I'm just gonna look forward to that. And it doesn't look like they all hate each other, and there's no Nightwing versus whoever, so you know, looks like it might be fun. So if I can't have a happy marriage between a bat and a cat, I will enjoy everything else. Because I'm here for the shipping, y'all.
So
Sorry.
I don't want to bust your bubble, but there was at least one solicit where I think Dick and Bruce are going to be going at it.
I mean, okay, that's their status quo, though. Flatline's coming back, so that's cool.
Oh, is she?
Yeah, she'll be in March. She'll be coming to
Batman and
Gotham.
Robin? So what? If it's not my girl, if it's not my girl, I don't want Flatline. I don't want him to be with Flatline.
You gotta move on, man.
I don't want him to be with Flatline. I don't want him to be with the Jin. I don't want He needs to go back to the
Your first love isn't always the person you end up with, Theo.
He needs to go
Just
back.
It forms who you are, and then you move on.
He needs to.
Except for Catwoman.
He needs to be with Maya, and that's it. I will own, and I know she's older than him. I don't care.
And she calls him her little brother. So
Okay, yes, sure.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Cool.
So, to kind of connecting for the first one, kind of connecting to one of my lowlights, I'm going to say I am very excited for the start of filming for the next era in DC films and TV. I'm very excited for it. We got the Batman 2 and Superman Legacy, and that's going to start filming next year. That's releasing 2025. We got the Caped Crusader TV show, the Amazon show, which we were talking about off air just before we started recording. We haven't heard much hype about that, but that's supposed to be coming out next year, and I'm very excited for it. We also, the Penguin, for people who are fans of Matt Reeves' Batman universe, as I am, that's coming out late 2024. And an underrated animated movie, The Batman Azteca, which is like a reinterpretation of the Batman story set in the time of the Aztecs versus the Conquistadors, which looks very interesting poster for that. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. As far as on the comic side, I'm looking forward to some of the Elseworld stories that have been announced, just out of sheer curiosity. I don't have no idea how good they're going to be, but Gotham Gaslight Kryptonian Age looks interesting. I was a fan of the original. I was a fan of the animated film. So really interested to see what that's like. And then Batman Nightfire, which has a great art team. I don't know if they're going to be writing it, the Mann brothers. I don't know if they're going to also be writing that story. There is a bit of checkered history with artists trying to write. But I am interested in
Don't
seeing.
get Ian started on that.
No, I know. I mean, I was kind of pushing back against that for a long time, but the reality is there is some truth to it. So, but I am just out of sheer curiosity. I mean, I'm interested to see what they do with that. So those are the two things I would say I'm looking forward to.
Did any of you guys watch the Gotham Knights show? I didn't.
Unfortunately,
Was it the worst thing ever?
yes.
Is it coming back for a second season?
No, thank God.
So it's all ending. The DCEU and whatever that was.
Yeah, the CW.
Arrowverse.
The CW.
I call it. I think it's called the Arrowverse.
Yeah.
Was it part
It's-
of the Arrowverse?
Not technically, but it was the same people.
So yeah. Anyway.
My turn?
Yes.
All right. So, first up, completely not related to Batman or comics, there's a movie coming out called The Fall Guy, starring Emily Blunt and Ryan Gosling, that I think looks very funny. I'm not the biggest Ryan Gosling fan, although he was good in that Drive movie. But Emily Blunt's fantastic. I love her. Now, two Batman universe related things. The first one is Bat Dash. What?
So y'all been cheating.
Wait, I thought you said 3. Oh no, 2.
Go
Well, I'm
ahead.
doing 2 anyway.
Go ahead.
Bat Dash Man first night, Dan Jurgens gets to do a black label, so I'm actually kind of excited because I like Dan Jurgens, and Mike Perkins is doing art. And then Gotham Academy's coming back to Batman Brave the Bold, so I'm very excited about that. So that's my things I'm excited about in 2024.
What made you interested in the Fall Guy? I mean, I have a thing with
Emily Blunt, I'm telling you!
I have a thing with certain reboots. Like the TV series was corny even back then as a kid.
Yeah, I went back and I didn't know it was a TV series before I saw the trailer, and I watched a couple episodes, and I'm like, yeah, it's extremely corny.
It was really corny. Alright, so what is Theo looking forward to in 2024? I am hoping that James Gunn's reboot of the DC EU version 2 or whatever he's gonna call it, the Gunverse, redeems everything that's gone wrong with Batman and DC on film. And not just Batman, but DC as a whole. Because even with movies that have been okay, the reviews or the figures for them have been horrid, to say the least. Like, for example, I thoroughly enjoyed Blue Beetle. I did not think Blue Beetle was a bad movie. The Flash had its ups and downs, but I don't think it was as bad as the numbers show it to be. What made them that way, and again, it's not just limited to DC. I just think a lot of people have superhero fatigue, but DC specifically, you know, Zack Snyder just ruined it, and I know Ian enjoyed a lot of his stuff, but
Let me clarify. I have an appreciation for Batman vs. Superman. That's it. I prefer the Whedon cut to the Snyder cut.
Oh, well, I mean, when it's 4 hours, I can imagine so. Cause that's, but I mean, for me, outside, and I said this in the server, outside of 300, which is not within the main DC universe. But outside of 300 and Man of Steel, I have not liked anything anything that Zack Snyder has produced. I mean, and I mean, it's just such a cult following that he has. A movie could be absolutely terrible, and that cult will fall on their sword for it, much like the Poison Ivy fans do on social media. But I'm just I am hopeful that James Gunn can revitalize the motion picture universe, and from there, as he expands to the TV series as well, that we can get something better, consistently better. Because again, Man of Steel was okay, and it just went after that. At least in my opinion. So I am prayerful that he's able to revitalize things, and I'm hoping he does. I need a wedding in 2024. And while I know that it won't be Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle, there's no way that it can't be Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon. You know, I think at certain points they were kind of leading that way, but there needs to be a wedding, pregnancy, something within the world of the Bat family that it just has to happen. And I think it, again, I will never expect it from DC with Bruce and Selena until it happens. And I need to see it with Barbara and Dick. Just go ahead and get it out the way. And I think DC might be afraid to do it, because I think if they do it, it'll prove that if it can happen with Dick and Barbara, it can probably happen with Bruce and Selena also. But I think that just go ahead and get it over with. And then I will pull a third one as well, since certain folks did. I need Batman and Detective Comics revitalized. Matter of fact, I will say I need the whole Batman universe in the world of comics revitalized, because this has been the first time in a long time where the majority of the Bat books have been a task for me to read. And I think Ian said it best in one of the Comic Cast episodes, that it will take new writers to do so. And so, as far as Tech and Catwoman are concerned, I think they need new writers, and I'm hoping we get that to revitalize those stories. I think Zdarsky can redeem himself for what happened with Gotham War and Failsafe, which I just thought was kind of what this new arc we're kind of seeing, that things may be turning around, and I hope that it continues. But I am hopeful that we get a revitalization of the Bat books again, because a lot of them haven't been fun to read. We read them because we have to. It's our job at TVU, but they haven't been fun. And I'm hopeful that in 2024 they'll be fun
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Because, to quote my friend Steph, enough of this nonsense.
And I would like to say that the fact that we get review copies does not mean that we are some kind of DC shills. I defy anyone to look at our reviews for Catwoman or Detective Comics and tell us that we are shilling for DC product.
We don't.
Yeah.
We do not. And I think DC is okay with it. I don't think they want everyone to be robots for them. They want honest feedback. And I mean that's all we can give them. Some titles just have been tough to read. But I have been a lifelong Batman fan. I have been a Batman fan for pretty much. I've been collecting comics since I was 9 years old. I probably became a bona fide Batman fan. Ooh, maybe since 10 or 11. I mean, Batman comic books is 85 to 90% of my comic book collection. Where Batman is on some cover in on some page in some panel. So he means he means something to me, and I don't want to feel tasked with reading some of his stories or the stories within this universe anymore. Or I don't want to be in a position where every 2 weeks I'm abstaining from reading Catwoman or one of the other bad titles. I want to be as excited to pick up a Batman title as I am to pick up many independent titles that are out there right now. And then the last thing, which was actually my second, is I would hope to see a lot of collaboration between the publishers again. I am hopeful that that can happen. 'Cause we always see, DC with IDW, Marvel with IDW, and we see where those collaborations have worked. I really hope DC and Marvel can get their heads out of the proverbial butts and work together again. We saw hints of that when they did the re-release of JLA and Avengers, when they did that commemoration for George Perez. So we know it can happen. I would love to see that happen again because they produced some hellified books that I really enjoyed, whether it was JLA and Avengers or it was the Amalgam series where we got all of our favorite characters being together. So I would love to see those things happen again in 2024. Again, with the way solicits have been coming out, we pretty much know that it's not the near future, but my brother can hope. So before we depart for the evening, I am just going to open the floor to you guys for whatever. And I will kick it off with Ian.
So I think everyone should collect the new Dark Knight Detective Volume 8, which contains the origin of Stephanie Brown. It is a great volume, a great read, and everyone should have it in their library.
Why?
It has the beginning of the Dixon Nolan Detective Comics run in it.
Steph, floor is yours.
What was my what?
I say the floor is yours.
Oh, the floor is mine. I thought we were answering a specific question. Like, I don't remember.
Be on brand.
Be on brand. Oh boy. So I've had a desire to go back, and I have nice little. I'm like Adil. I collect the trades. I buy the floppies when I know either they won't be in a trade or there's a single issue. I actually have a list of Super Sun stuff I have to make sure I have the issues of if they don't exist in trade.
Damien John covers those. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, I love spreadsheets. So I just went to DC Fandom and I went and I found everything John's been in, everything Damien's been in, Peter Croft reference, color coded by what I own and what I don't. I'm such a dork.
Okay,
Um,
so not to confuse anyone, but Steph is a stats person. So
I am a stats person. Back when we did numbers, I took over for Jessica when we were doing numbers, and
she loves spreadsheets.
then they left Diamond, and so they didn't do numbers anymore. Yeah, I love spreadsheets. Sexy. Yeah, but no, lately I've had a desire to go back and read all my collections, my Batcat books and my I don't know. I have some I've never read that I picked up, like some early Damien stuff I've never read, and I've never read Grayson. So maybe I'll check out Grayson. I don't know. I have a couple of those. But I also have a lot of manga I want to read. This could be a long year. I need to lay off the video games this year and play and read more manga and more comics. Anyway, that's my plan for the year. That's what I have to say.
Yeah, I think I haven't actually tried doing this, but the League of Comic Book Geeks app, I think, is very helpful for exactly what you just said. So there is a function in the app where you can see issues that a certain character has appeared in, and then you can easily sort of um, catalog or inventory what you own, and then you can match up what's missing, and then put that in a list of what you want to buy. Which I've been using it myself, and I find it very useful. So maybe that might be something that helps you.
Yeah, I
Maybe.
can't help but advocate for those guys either. And again, this is the unpaid solicitation for them.
If they want to pay us, we'll take their money though.
We will, but for what to do, and I am a pro member. $19 for the features that they have on their website and with that app is more than worth it. And Alo is correct with some of the features you can do with just putting in a character's name and just finding a wealth of information with regards to the titles that they've made appearances in. You know,
You have
fans.
to be careful though, because sometimes it's like, oh, they're dead, or oh, it's just a picture of them on a shelf, or what. And so yeah, I've
Yeah,
actually purchased a few books, and I'm like, the character I want isn't even in here.
yeah. If there's one thing that I am wary with the league about is looking at their looking at the release schedule for new comics on a weekly basis. It's not always accurate, and I would then have to depend on Diamond and the previews website, which is not that great looking aesthetically. But yeah, I can't help but advocate for those guys at League of Comic Geeks. It's a great site. Oh, floor is yours.
I don't have much to add other than I really appreciate what you said about Zack Snyder. I don't want to sound like I have a personal vendetta against him because I don't. I don't know him, but he has, as you said, a cult following that's very loud and very vocal about supporting him. And it's not just supporting him, but uh, pretending, for lack of a better word, that he's one of the great storytellers of the last few centuries or something. And I think I've seen that a lot online, and I think he kind of plays into that a little bit. But the numbers don't lie, and at this point, we've had several consecutive Zack Snyder releases that have underwhelmed critically, underperformed financially. The latest one is Rebel Moon, of course, which people I think are just watching to to see how bad it is at this point. I know several people who have done that. So I think it's a good thing that perhaps we no longer have to hear from this cult following going forward. And I am glad that he's no longer in charge of the fortunes of the DC characters in film and on television. Uh, but yeah, other than that, I don't have much to add.
So I have a few things I want to close out with. Um, First off, there is no better time to be a comic book fan as it is right now. You know, for the longest, we have had folks, you know, talking about the death of the comic book industry. Yes, I'm looking at you, Robert Lightfield. And it just hasn't happened. And I remember when I attended New York Comic Con this year and was at the DC panel. Marie Javins, well, let me correct myself. Marie Javins, gotta pronounce her name correctly, you know, talked about just how good of a year that DC had. But when you listen to some critics again, you know, the comic book industry is dying. Yet you go to a crowdfunding site like Kickstarter, and their comics outdo all of their other categories. You look at the number of independent comics that have, or the independent publishers that have popped up over the years, and they're not popping up and going away. They're flourishing. You know, back in the day when I was a kid starting to collect comics, and you know, and eventually we had Image come on to the floor. You know, they were an indie. You know, they were considered an indie publisher, and now it's no longer the big two; it's the big three, including Image. So there's no better time to be a comic book fan. You know, it's there for everyone and anyone, and whether it's a superhero title, whether it's manga, whether it's sci-fi, Transformers, Void Rivals, whether it's G.I. Joe, which is on its 300th issue now, 302 actually. You know, there's something for everyone in the world of comic books. So there's no better time to be a comic book fan, and I hope that you guys continue taking advantage of it. Ooh, excuse me. Take advantage of it. Lastly, you know, I can't say how much I appreciate you guys that are here with me this evening, and Donovan and Scott and Jamie and everyone else who contributes in some way or another to the Batman universe. When I took things over in June after Dustin decided to step down, you know, I had my ideas, but I was truly at a loss as to where I wanted things to go. And you guys truly stepped up to help me out in one way or another to make life easier. You know, Otto stepped out of his shadow of loving trade paperbacks to do City of Madness, you know, to do a floppy. Steph stepped up to do previews simply because she hated to do merch.
Hate merch. It just wasn't my top 50.
Ian covered Catwoman for as long as he possibly could, you know, and I truly appreciate everything that you guys have done to make my life a little bit easier with my role here at TBU, and I can't say thank you enough for all that you do. And as we go into 2024, I am looking to do some wonderful things moving forward, and I am happy to have you guys along for the ride. I've met some wonderful folks over just this last year. You know, I met Ian for the first time in Chicago. I met Adil for the first time in Toronto at Fan Expo. Met Scott for the first time in Chicago. So my level of friends have grown, and I truly appreciate you all for being in my work life here at TBU, and I look forward to everything that I have planned going forward and having you guys join me with that. So before I start crying, I will shut. Steph's blowing her nose. Maybe she's crying too. But I will go ahead and close things down. Look, everyone, thank you all for joining us here at this end of year live stream here at the Batman universe. There is plenty of more. There are plenty of things that's going to be coming down in 2024. I ask you all to continue your support of us. If you're not a member of our Patreon, I strongly hope that you consider doing so. We are doing a whole lot more there. I'm bringing back TBU Extra in 2024. TBU Raw will be making a comeback. And the TBU podcast network is going to be growing in 2024. We will be bringing on a new podcast for those of you who not only are fans of Batman, but just of the DC universe as a whole. Beyond the Gates of Gotham will be coming out by February. It is my plan, where we will be covering all DC books not Batman related. So if you are a fan of Superman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, The Flash, Wonder Woman, we'll be covering those books as well, as we again hopefully look at doing that beginning in February. So I thank you all for joining us this evening. I hope to see you all 2024. And here's my little hot thing as well, since everybody else doing it. Thank you all again for joining us, and until next time, be safe on the streets of Gotham.